Hello, and welcome to our Cybersecurity Trends and Risks in 2025 webinar. I'm your host today, Adam Farrig, Vice President of Strategic Markets at Oak Street Funding. Joining me today is David Christman, Chief Information Officer at Oak Street Funding, Ben Phillips, Director in IT and Risk Advisory at KSM, and Cody Rivers, Managing Director at Reveal Risk. Today, we're going to be covering the current state of cybersecurity, key trends to watch out for, the FTC Safeguards Rule, and much more. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and please take a minute to introduce yourselves, and we'll go around the room.
Excellent. Go ahead, Ben.
Sounds good. Hey, everyone. Great to be here. Ben Phillips, Director, IT Risk Advisory at KSM. Typically, how I spend my time is I end up doing a lot of information security and internal controls auditing. So SOC 2s, high trust, ISO, internal audit, and I've kind of been doing that for the past 12 years. I went to accounting school, so I started my career as a CPA and dipped into the wild side, and I really liked IT and kept going with it. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Cody Rivers background, born and raised Indy, Indy, born and bred here, but I went to college at Purdue, where I know Ben as well too. But 18 years in cybersecurity. Before it was really called cybersecurity, it came from the infrastructure side. And then a lot of my role in daily work is on strategic advisory, consulting, and then program transformation for enterprises.
Great. I'm David Christman, Chief Information Officer for Oak Street Funding. In my role here, I'm usually sitting on the other side of, the auditors come in and look at the stuff that we're building to make sure that we're in good shape. And it's great to have you guys here. Look forward to learning.
Awesome, man.
Thanks, guys. We're going to jump right in here. So to start things off, I'd love to see, what are you guys seeing in the current state of cybersecurity? What trends should we be watching out for right now? I'll start with Cody.
Sure. It's Wild West. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think there's no shortage of news articles that you see right now on cybersecurity. A lot of things that we're seeing right now is a lot of kind of rebaselining and strategic alignment of spends going out the door. Are we mitigating risk? Are we not mitigating risk? And what is that story? How to articulate it from the tech and risk side to the business side. And with that, you see a lot of supply chain, third party, where do I invest the dollars? And so, again, it's a lot of kind of clarity and strategy. And then how do the pieces below that feed up into that strategy? But a lot of C-suite level, they know it's there. They're aware of the risk, but there's a lot of uncertainty on how they want to attack that risk.
Yeah, I would probably add to that. From an attack surface perspective, we're seeing, phishing as still being a number one attack vector. Bad actors are getting, just like organizations implementing AI into their strategy. Mm-hmm. Bad actors are also implementing AI into their strategy to make it more effective and scalable. We would also see that currently the risk of third parties, as Cody mentioned, vendor risk is very prevalent. A lot of organizations can be very, very good at their own cybersecurity, but the one thing that they are not as great at is managing the risks of their third-party vendors. That's the whole FTE in itself. So that's a risk where the bad actors are identifying which kind of organizations are in with these other large companies and how can we infiltrate through them. So those are a couple of areas that are hot.
Yeah, it's good cyber. Absolutely. So a lot of our clients here at Oak Street Funding are acquiring other businesses, specifically within wealth management, CPA, and the insurance industries that we serve. So if you guys have clients that are going through a merger or acquisition, what cybersecurity considerations should companies keep in mind that are often overlooked or missed when they're so heavily focused on just the acquisition itself and not so much the security side of it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a kind of a growing thing as well. I think historically it was a heavy tech focus on how many machines, what's the software, what's the integration plan on the tech side. A lot of things we're seeing now are like compliance and regulatory driven. So you're looking at what industries are these in your area specifically. You have a lot of financial oversight and regulatory things. And so when companies are acquiring new firms or targets, do they have clarity on what that company is what they're compliant against a framework or something. So that way, when they can integrate them, there's clear focus on the cost to integrate those companies. And so that's an area I see a lot on the diligence side and the integration planning. But when these, as Ben mentioned earlier with third party risk, it's kind of like who's coming along to the party with them. So I acquired this company and this asset, but who's in their supply chain? What third parties did they use? And who else is coming to the party that I got a plan for?
I would probably also add to that. So in the process, so a lot of it is upfront due diligence, financial diligence. What we're seeing a lot of now, it really depends on like what type of company is being purchased and what commitments do they have from a security and tech perspective to keep moving and meeting their next 5-year goals once the acquisition happens. So we're seeing a lot more, as Cody mentioned, cyber diligence. So not just doing a pen test and not just seeing where their gaps are, but more so seeing, hey, do you have policies written down? Do you actually do these? Or are these just like a nice thing good to have for cybersecurity insurance? Yeah. Integration risk, on that front, it's more so we're seeing what is the strategy with regards to, is this a bolt-on where you're going to let them run as they run until the next transaction happens, or are you integrating this organization into your existing IT infrastructure? And if that's the case, then we're saying, okay, what are the hurdles you're gonna have to go through with that as it relates to like old technical debt or not?
That's a good point on that. So you mentioned integration, like to this point, is this going to be a standalone integration where I'm going to buy a company, they're going to be in our portfolio and stand alone? Are they going to integrate and become a new brand? So I think one thing they want to focus on is what does it look like on day one for the new employee? How do I onboard them? And that's a challenge as the company being acquired, as what that looks like. And also for the one acquiring is like, how do I make sure I get them? Because you bought them for revenue, right? So the goal is to get them back to revenue as soon as possible. And I think kind of minimizing and planning for that, because no surprises come in. And I'm sure, as you may have seen before, once that deal's closed and inked, it's how fast can we get this up and running? And so then it becomes the clock stars.
Yeah.
Great point.
So many times I think it's an afterthought, right? Especially in bolt-on acquisitions. It's, hey, I'm just going to bring these guys in.
Yep.
And then we'll worry about day 2 when it gets here. But, one of the things that we like to say is we begin with the end in mind, right? So it sounds like preparation from an IT perspective is every bit as important as preparation when it comes to financials and everything else.
For sure. And I guess with that, other things that can be looked at will be like, so for the target organization that's being purchased, like what kind of compliance requirements do they have? There's a lot of different like security compliance things they have to go through, different audits, SOC 2s, high trust, whatever that is. But further than that, and I think what really gets overlooked is outside of those frameworks, what's in their contract that they've agreed to doing from a security and IT perspective. That's just buried. And and then so they get, oh, revenue's here, okay, we're getting paid, AR's down, but then they're like, okay, what did this company that we bought agree to on this? What contracts are they in breach of? Saying they said they'd do this, they're not doing that, and that now you just inherited all of that risk and all of that stuff. So knowing up front, like if we ever get checked, what are we going to have to do to remediate, tell the right story, and and kind of do good with the contracts that we've agreed upon. What kind of culture and training does the target company have as it relates to cybersecurity? If it's not an organization that has had a lot of that in their blood just because of the nature of the business they're in, so be it. But if they're an organization that should, how do you find that out?
I think also too that the challenge you're going to see is you don't get a lot of time because they're like, let's go. So you get a couple questions, maybe an hour or two with some folks, ask your questions and report back on the integration, what we're going to do. So that's the challenge is like, how do I come in, be precise, be direct, get the data I need necessary, and then form that into more of a strategies. And if we do close, when we close, how does it look like?
And a lot of it is also just like giving the purchaser as much information as they can to make an informed decision of like, from a capital expenditure perspective in the future, after we do this, aside from payroll, FTEs, all that fun stuff, what's our expense going to be to get this leveled up? You asked, part of the question was kind of what's missed. Unreported or unknown breaches are in your system for a while before they're known. There's things folks can do to search the dark web or search other information sources as what's out there. Compromised passwords. That's an easy one to say, like, hey, here, these email domains have compromised passwords. Okay, well, that could have happened. Third-party risk, again, third-party software vendors that are immature or not meeting expectations. I would say the last thing would be like cybersecurity insurance gaps. So making sure that post-acquisition, that whatever policies that organization, the acquiring target has, flowed through the new transaction.
Yeah, it's incredible to sit down and think about it. Me on the lending side, for a lot of times this is not looked at up front of how much time and diligence is the IT group going to get to sit down and look at what type of risk is there with migrating clients and all their personal assets and personal information of their nature.
It's also where too, because it's newer. Cyber diligence historically was kind of under IT, and now you're seeing it a lot of firms, the enterprise level, it's separate because it's a different skill set. There's a technical acumen of like the bits and bytes and network part of integration. There's the actual, to Ben's point, the compliance and regulatory. And if I'm in healthcare, if I'm in finance, if I'm publicly traded, there's different requirements on reporting breaches and what's material. And then you have the lawyers get involved in what you can and can't say. So a lot of those things are kind of discussed, and that's not an IT skill set. And so you kind of put your IT person on the hook to do the diligence. And sometimes it's not their skill set to ask those questions. And so what's missed is it doesn't get asked until it closes. And then we're into the transition or a TSA that pops up, and there's this confusion, there's unplanned budget. And there's kind of sometimes, not always, but there can be chaos. And then at that point,
that's more expensive.
It's a lot more expensive
for your client, right? So what kind of cyber attacks are you seeing, most common today? And how do they relate to businesses?
Yeah, I would say cyber attacks. So phishing is a very common one, where a bad actor will try and get the end user to disclose information such as account information, click on a link, do something. So what this can lead to is, the improper payment of invoices to the wrong stakeholder. It can lead to exposed client information, data loss. We see ransomware is a common one. Again, this is when by whatever ways they get in, could be through phishing, could be through other vectors, they're able to basically shut down your system, encrypt your backups so you can't operate. This means that generally clients will then call their cyber insurance provider if they have coverage, or if they don't, or there's one of two ways to get out of ransomware. Way one is pray that your backups are working, and hopefully you have that so you can rebuild your systems and say, okay, cool, you took our keys, but you may not have actually gotten the information, so we're just going to rebuild it or spin up a backup and call it a day. The other option is pay the ransom. And then you gotta go through the exercise of saying, well, is this a good bad actor that actually give me the key back? Right. Or are they just going to take my money and extort me even more?
And how far do you go down that road before
and that's typically
no return?
That's typically a road that's handled by the insurance organization, because they have information on like which bad actors are part of the Better Business Bureau. Where they actually, in regards, they actually do return the key back. So there's metrics.
I say most of these.
Which ones are honest with that, and which ones are not honest with that.
A lot of things you see too it depends on the business, because different businesses have different points of pain. And I look at, to Vince's point earlier, manufacturing, heavy cash on hand, operation is incredibly paramount. So ransomware is more prevalent in manufacturing because every minute you're down, that's lost revenue. So you're more likely to pay a ransomware versus like a professional services company that we can sit for a day or two. It's not great, but we can keep operating. Manufacturing is a bigger target. Then you have financial ones. You've got the engineering, social engineering, phishing. Those are common across every industry. And then a newer one is really AI and deepfake. That's one that's taken off. It's risen about four-figure percentage points over the past 2 years because of the rise in technology and the ease of access. And so this is where someone is showing up at a meeting as somebody else with the voice and the face of someone else, and they're asking for authority or to send a wire route, or asking. There's a Hong Kong heist a couple years ago for $25 million, one of the first ones that went out there. And that was where someone deepfaked the CFO. He authorized some wires to go out, and it was probably 2 days before they realized it was not the right person. In the other vein, there was one at Ferrari, which is in the news. This is all public information. And the CFO got deepfaked. It was a near miss because something about the character made him flinch for a second. He said, hey, what was that book I had you read the other week? And he couldn't answer the question. So that was the only reason that the process was able to break it. But it's newer things coming out. You got your regular ones, and now you're seeing some new stuff kind of be phased in with the advance of technology.
Yep.
Great.
I would probably also add, just third-party risk. So when the organization is relying heavily on third-party SaaS, what happens when that goes down? So purchased a vehicle in 2024. It at the start of it ended up happening via paper because there was a very, very large vendor that serves a lot of dealerships that had a significant incident that put a lot of dealerships in turmoil. So the highlight of the story is doing an evaluation of who your third-party vendors are and imagining, like, if that one went away, what happens? And then based on that factor of this would significantly disrupt our operations, what should we do to make sure that, or what should we ask to make sure that that vendor has, in the theme of ransomware, has a plan to stand up their systems so they have SLAs in their contract of how much downtime can they have, but what can we do to keep them accountable to that? So it's really pushing the buck downstream each way.
Got it. So with that, I'm going to transition to Dave over here. What could be the costs of inaction? We're talking about a lot of things here. So if you don't take action, these companies that don't have cybersecurity precautions in place, what can be the cost of something like that?
Costs can be significant. There's always financial costs. The business could stop functioning. You could actually lose actual cash. There's reputational risk. You're losing customer data. Or even just having anything happen, could impact your reputation.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I was saying earlier, the hard part is like, how do you quantitatively give that to a CEO? Is like, what's it going to cost me? And you mentioned reputational risk, and like, what's the value there, right? Like, you can't put a dollar on. I don't get a client, I can put a dollar there, but those are things of hard to quantify.
Absolutely. So, what common cybersecurity frameworks are out there, and how do they help? Ben?
Sure. Yeah. So there's common frameworks. There's a lot of them. So there's NIST CSF, which is a widely used framework. The Center for Internet Security Controls, another common framework. The CIS is probably built more for mid-size organizations. SOC 2 is a reporting framework that has a set of standards for security controls. There's HITRUST, which is another prescriptive set of controls that really started to focus on the healthcare industry, and now it's a little bit more industry agnostic. SOC 2 and HITRUST I see a lot more in the US. There's ISO 27001, which is another prescriptive framework, or you're very, very much international based. So if you have clients that are international, they may be asking you for an ISO 27001. If you have organizations serving in the US, they may ask you likely for a SOC 2. That's on the compliance side. Couple examples.
Yeah. No, you're a great point. And there's, I say all of them have like an 80% overlap on kind of what they are. They're just different, maybe worded differently or different by geographical. But I think a big difference in some of them are self-attested, where you just say, hey, we follow this framework. Other ones, like they mentioned, are SOC 2. That's a third party attested. So you can't just say, I follow SOC 2 and that in your SOC 2 compliant. You have to have a third party like Ben's company that comes in and verifies independently. Mm-hmm. So then you have a report saying that, yes, this is being done. So that's a key thing in some frameworks that some have got a certifying body, some don't. Mm-hmm. But again, all of them in general have a large overlap. There's just a different kind of flavor to maybe a certain nuanced part.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's go into FTC safeguards. Okay. So as we step into that, what does it require from businesses? Talk to me a little bit about FTC safeguards and businesses.
Sure. So FTC Safeguards Rule is required by GLBA. Basically, what
acronyms?
Yes, it does.
We're big on acronyms here.
Yeah,
so yes,
the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. So essentially, what it covers is banks have their own. So the FTC is really hitting consumer financial information for financial institutions that are typically not seen as banks. So what this means is CPA firms, lending operations, mortgage brokers, auto dealerships that offer financing, and other insurance groups, other similar groups. And what it requires is basically to have a respectable security program. In very, very short. The overall goal is to protect consumer information. It is a regulatory rule, so it's not like a compliance framework. It's something that you have to do, which there's been a couple amendments, one in 2021, think one was affected in 2021 or 2022. One just came effective in 2024, related to breach notification. The end of the day, it requires the organization to appoint a leader of the security program. Okay. You have to have security policies in place. You have to do a risk assessment, a security risk assessment. You have to have administrative and technical safeguards such as MFA, encryption, other things like that on systems that host consumer information. It requires you to have monitoring and log monitoring of scanning, such as vulnerability scanning, pen tests. And then last but not least, it also requires you to report the status of your security posture to management formally. Got it. So there's other requirements too, but at the 10,000 foot view, that's what it requires. And I will say that given the nature of this rule and the outfits that it requires, so these are not heavily regulated outfits, right? This could be a small time, a tax preparer in some.
So big or small?
Big or small. This is a rule, just like the speed limit. Big or small.
So Cody's car shop is compliant to be against these.
If you offer financing, right, you have to be in compliant of it. When you'll get checked depends on when you speed and who you upset. But
what kind of ticket you get?
Yeah. So there are fines. Like anything, they'll the FTC will continue to regulate it. The one thing I will give the FTC is, unlike some other frameworks, they have made it extremely simple with the FAQs and the information on their website in plain English what you need to do. So it's not like it's a pay to play and you go find something. There's no third party attestations with it, but it is very simple to identify what do I need to do, and if your organization has the competency and personnel to execute that strategy, so be it. But it also allows you pretty simply to find someone to help you with it. And I guess I would say it's not a 185 control framework that you see with other large frameworks. It's rather small, but the items are really real.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what steps can companies take to meet those requirements, from a safeguards rule perspective?
Yeah. Step one, appoint a leader of the security program. So it can't just be like someone that drew the short stick and didn't make the meeting and said, "Oh, well, you're doing now."
Maybe a CIO.
Yeah. So it's really, but also with some of these smaller organizations, you also got to remember, like, they don't have, smaller, like if you look at, okay, you got the large car dealerships with directors of IT, a lot of infrastructure, but then you got the buy here, pay here market. And then you got smaller insurance companies with third party, or you got smaller tax shops. Mm-hmm. A lot of these sometimes use third party folks, or they try and do it themselves to save costs because the cost of business is high. So right, at the end of the day, appoint a leader, make sure that leader is competent and can follow through with that strategy. Through that leader, do a security risk assessment. Again, there's really good information on the FTC website around what's required.
Is that something you can vendor out?
Yeah.
Is that so you can vendor out that leader? It's not just like
I always say with third party outsourcing, phenomenal and
more risk too.
Well, I say you can outsource the responsibility, you can outsource the accountability. So yes, you're exactly right. You can outsource and find good partners, but someone internally should still be accountable to say, like, as internal resource or FT of this company, I have oversight of what they're doing.
Yeah, just like general contracting, right? You can outsource electrical, but you got to know, within reason. Do you have a reputable vendor, and do you know what to check to make sure it's up to code?
Yeah. Reason I ask is so much, especially as businesses are scaling, so much is outsourced, whether it's IT, compliance, what have you, fractional CFOs. So it's like you can only, as you outsource that, what are your safeguards you have in place to continue doing something?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what mistakes are we seeing? When businesses are looking at cybersecurity rules and they're trying to avoid them, like where are the mistakes coming?
I think it's expensive. It can get expensive really quick. The thing I see a lot of times is like chasing compliance frameworks. And so I think the reason I say that is build holistically, build your program, and then map in frameworks as they become relevant. I think because oftentimes the pressure or the rules come from three things, I think. One, a customer says, "Thou shalt do this to get my business." Two, there's a regulatory body that says, "Thou shalt do this to hold a certification or hold a license to do this." And then three, you've got just internal, call it good moral if it comes to say we want to protect customer data. And so I think kind of balancing those in a holistic approach and establishing your posture. And then as biz dev finds something, a regulatory body releases a FTC releases something, we map, okay, that control's covered with our control too. So your control may map to 3 different frameworks and different ones, but I think build holistically. Otherwise, like you chase every compliance framework out there, Lord, you'll spend a lot of money and time just chasing that just to operate it. And in just good financial sense, you can't spend $100,000 to guard $50,000. So it's got to make sense to how you balance that. But I think that's the challenge I see, is that it's just so much coming in, and there's this chasing real fast. Instead, kind of pause, build holistically, and map in.
One thing I think about, this is really a technical realm we're talking about, cyber, but it boils down to people. And I mean, that's where a lot of risk is with the phishing. So not establishing a cyber posture culturally, I think, is a big mistake.
Absolutely. One of the things that's talked about, here at Oak Street with, Dave leading us on the information side and how that relates to security, is how much we pay attention to it and how much we talk about it. It's in our trainings, it's in our, ongoing compliance with the bank and everything we do. So, I think that's a great point. These are all people businesses at the end of the day, right? Like, we can use tech and we can use AI as much as we want to, but if the folks that you employ are not, and the vendors you seek out are not marching along the same path that you are, you're going to run into problems. I think that's the narrative that I hear here. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd probably add one more thing. So a big mistake organizations can make is, from a leadership perspective, making sure that strong cyber hygiene comes from the top down.
Yeah.
So what we see a lot of is, we don't see a lot of, but what I hear a lot of is, and have seen is, okay, to get this deal done or to be in line with your peers, we have to emulate a strong cybersecurity posture, because clients are asking us all these security questionnaires and all these different things. We have to have good things to write down. We can't just say, no, we're not doing it.
Right.
It can be seen as a cost center. A lot of the times it's seen as a cost center. So leadership needs to be backing this, because they need to be able to see down the road, big picture, as Cody said, quantifying when is this worth it and what is the drawback of not having it. So I think from a leadership perspective, making sure that they're all on board to do that, not treating it as a compliance checklist. So like, if you're just going to do the bare minimum, if you're just going to go to the gym and do 6 exercises and say, well, we did the gym today, like, odds are you're not gonna see a lot of results, because you're not passionate about it.
Got it.
And along with people, like, your people are the protectors of your assets, so they need to be passionate about it. So it also flows through training. If your training is not great, or it's like, I just got to sign this policy, I'm not going to read it, and technically it says that I agreed to this thing, you may want to rethink that. And I think the last thing, the miss is probably, organizations haven't done a formal, like, they haven't checked themselves on incident response. Mm-hmm. So like, when something does happen, like, who are they going to call? Like, what's the like, if phone systems are down, how are they going to call? Who do they call first? Who makes that call first?
Right.
What do your, if you have an organization that has outbound call center where you're talking to customers because that's how they reach out to you.
Yeah.
What do they say? Mm-hmm. And if you've ever had a technology glitch of a third-party system, you call and say, it's down. And then the call center people say, well, yeah, I think we're having an issue right now. I think it's ransomware. Like, don't say that. Like, the organization needs to know what they're supposed to say and what they're not supposed to say. And I think that all happens with, has the organization sat down and kind of ran through, like, okay, when one of these 3 scenarios happen, the most common one, this is our playbook. This is how we inform people ops. This is how we inform finance. This is how we inform customer success. This is how we form, operations. So I think that's a really important thing that organizations typically, well, we haven't done that yet. Like,
next week's episode on business continuity and incident response.
You will. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing here is, don't sit in the back of the class and get a C- as it relates to cybersecurity and information technology and how you work with all your employees on it. This is not just a checklist to complete at the end of due diligence. This is something that we should get out in front of, something we should work together with our vendors, our employees, our people on, to make sure everybody's doing the right stuff.
Yeah, because I think on the transaction side and the diligence side, it doesn't matter. You're really pushing the market, like, what fiscal year budget is going to hit. Mm-hmm. And how quickly is it going to hit? Are you going to be able to amortize that expense over the course of 4 years if the previous owner hasn't been able to do that yet? Or are you just going to wait and hope someone else buys it as is? So I think that's a big thing of like just fiscal planning as well.
Got it.
So
So last thing here, guys, as we've talked about everything that's going on, requirements, what's the next big cybersecurity challenge and that you guys see coming? Like what's on the horizon?
The thing I think really is human risk. I think you mentioned it earlier, and there's been this not over-indexing, but if you look at like since call it the 80s, there's this massive investment in the tech. There's firewalls, next gen firewalls, network security. There's all the different brands of security technology out there, but the human side of investment's been very small until as of recent. And we mentioned earlier some table stake training, which is important, but it's going to be how do I level up the humans in my organization? Because if you look at the breaches over the years too, 95+% of them are human initiated. But a lot of our spending is on the tech side. So there's that balance. I think the challenge is how do I educate my human workforce and to make it relevant? Because you're fighting for a pie that's already full. So, and you've got, if you're hustling HIPAA training, you've got technology training, you've got your CLEs for renewal for your licensing. There's so much training going on, but I got to get some more time per servant. So you don't necessarily get more time, but I got to be more pointed with my training to make sure it's relevant, it's meaningful. And I think that's like the human risk side. So as companies develop their human risk program, what's their curriculum? What's relevant to these specific personas within my organization? And then how does that translate to my broader plan?
Yeah. I think in addition to that, I think you're going to see more AI powered attacks. You're going to see more third-party risk. You're going to see more downtime from potential third parties just due to the nature of outsourcing software or going to the cloud. You're going to see a lot of that. And then I think you're also going to see tougher regulations. It could be organizations hammering down on their vendors to say, hey, no, you have to actually do this now, or they're going to shop. I think you're going to see, just like other regulatory bodies, like we're talking about the FTC Safeguards Rule, the SEC, other similar type bodies that keep folks accountable for cyber. You're going to see more amendments that are going to be holding groups accountable. You're going to see more regulations. You're going to see more fines because that's the only way they can make it known that folks need to put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for being here today, sharing your insights with the audience. Thank you to those of you who tuned in and submitted questions today. We appreciate your continued viewership. Stay tuned for more from us here at Oak Street Funding with new content, new guests. Thanks again.